Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend. Before going any further though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So, this weekend domestically, we saw some things that pretty much played out the way that many of us expected it to, and that is that Shang-Chi has once again come in at number one for the fourth week in a row, having very little competition in those 4 weeks, by the way, but that'll change next week with Venom Let There Be Carnage coming out, which of course will absolutely be coming in at number one at the box office. Whether the film's making any money, we'll have to wait and see exactly how much money it makes in that opening weekend, and also subsequently what it makes in that week two drop-off point. But Shang-Chi coming in with another $13.2 million, putting the total domestic cumulative at around $196.4 million. So this movie will easily pass $200 million by the end of next weekend at the very latest, and some are speculating that it could get as high as $250 million. I have some doubts about that, specifically about getting to the 250 number, only because once you have films like Venom coming out, and then the week after that you have No Time to Die coming out, and then the week after that, or 2 weeks after that, you have Dune coming out, there's so much competition about to actually come to play here. I think that Shang-Chi is eventually just going to kind of fall by the wayside. It's made a lot of money up to this point, and it's going to reach the point of profitability by next week based on the numbers that we have. However, I do think that the Cinderella run, kind of, as you would say, is really over at this point, because when you don't have a lot of competition, it's very easy to kind of, build up the numbers there, really motivate people to go out because there's not much else to go see that seems to be worth watching, and so we'll wait and see. Again, this is something that I've mentioned in previous videos. I'm more interested actually to see what the drop-off is going to be after next weekend, as I imagine that you have studios making room for other films that are set to come out, and obviously Shang-Chi at that point will have made its money back, or will be very close to making its money back, and so it will have done what it was supposed to do, as any movie is supposed to do, which is, at least break even, make some money. Not to mention, of course, it's going to make a little bit of money on Blu-ray 4K, DVDs, so even if this film were to somehow randomly just break off completely, which is not likely, and just barely get to the break-even number, again, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but even if it did, it would easily be able to make back its money in Blu-ray 4K sales at this point in time. Dear Evan Hansen, the musical that, again, as I previously mentioned, I actually really like the soundtrack for. I think it's a very, powerful musical. Probably should not have been released in theaters, as it made $7.5 million in its debut, which is definitely not a very good sign for the financial success of this film going forward. Free Guy continues to well overperform what anyone had expected, still out at over 3,000 theaters after 7 weeks. Were a domestic cum of $114.1 million, making another $4 million a weekend. Candyman continuing also to, punch above its weight with $2.5 million in its fifth week. Still, again, around $56 million domestically. Cry Macho dropping off a bit, 52% in its second weekend, making another $2 million. And then Cop Shop, which was the other film that we were looking at for its second weekend drop, we saw that this movie had a 45% drop, which isn't too bad when you think about it. However, when you look at the original number for its opening weekend, definitely not as good as it could have been. Now, while all this stuff was going on domestically, we also saw the second international weekend for Dune. And Dune is actually doing quite well in comparison to other films, even pre-pandemic films by certain standards. And so, as it says here, Dune mined $77 million cum through second early offshore frame international box office. So let's go ahead and break this down. It says, Warner Brother Legendary's Dune continued its spicy run at the international box office. Ooh, isn't that a funny pun? Adding a further $26.3 million from 32 markets to lift the offshore total to $76.5. To quote the Denis Villeneuve-directed film, this is only the beginning, as the sci-fi epic is an early overseas release with many key areas to come. The overall drop from opening was a terrific 32%. So 32% drop from the original opening in the markets that it's in. But what's interesting for me, at the very least, is what it's doing better than at this point. It says it's like-for-like markets, and at today's rates, the world-building saga is running ahead of all comps from Tenet, which means it's doing 12% better than what Tenet was doing, 49% better than what Black Widow was doing, 64% better than Shang-Chi, 73% better than Blade Runner 2049, and 87% better than Godzilla vs. Kong. So all of these numbers are really putting it in a position to potentially be a financial success. And as I've said before, we got to kind of wait for the other major markets, not just the major European markets, but of course the North American markets to really open up to get a good idea exactly of how much or how little this film is going to end up making as far as net gain, net profits are concerned. However, it does seem to say and seems to indicate that this is doing a lot better than what I think some people may have expected, even myself. Looks like that whatever they're doing as far as their promotion for this movie and their strategy of releasing this internationally first, I think is working to some extent. The big test, of course, will be how much it makes opening weekend here domestically, because if this is able to, and it seems to, build enough positive word of mouth and push people to go see this film in theaters, and not just in theaters, but also on, IMAX screens and obviously premium ticket formats, that would just, again, be more money for this film. But of course, as always, I must always put the reminder out there that you have a film like Dune working with communists in China, because this film will get a China release. And so that means millions of dollars will be going to Chinese communists who, as we know, are guilty of various human rights violations. And any other studio that always does deals with China is always going to be called out for that. And I'll try and always remain as consistent as I possibly can with that as far as the numbers are concerned. As we've seen, though, Shang-Chi is indeed the highest grossing pick at pandemic box office for the domestic. So this is something that is, again, it's something where it has to be talked about, right? $196.5 million for the domestic marketplace. Film is very likely going to pass the last film that crossed $200 million domestically at the box office was Bad Boys for Life. That film will probably be passed by the end of next weekend. So there is no doubt at this point that this film is a success. Again, by next weekend, the number will actually finally reach and pass up the break-even number and therefore fall into the profitability territory. I see a lot of people on social media trying to spin numbers and trying to add numbers that don't really exist yet. I'm all for saying that, hey, did this film likely cost more in marketing because of delays and because of all these other things? Probably. The issue is that we don't have those numbers. That's all pure speculation. And so therefore, if we're doing any type of official analysis, if we're doing any type of actual box office numbers, again, actual statistics, we really can't make up for that, or we really can't have a legitimate number to put in there. And so I would say that we should probably just caution ourselves to not go down that route. Let's just be honest here, based on the numbers as they're being reported, based on the numbers as they actually are, and based on the typical way that the box office works as far as what studios get by the end of their run, this film is indeed in the profitability territory. Again, not officially breaking even yet, but very much on pace to actually be able to do so. All right, going to my handy dandy chart. I have some charts. Shout out to Kyle Dunnigan for that joke. D. Urban Hansen has said $7.5 billion. Cop Shop and Cry Macho in their second weekend. We can now make some projections that Cry Macho will make anywhere between $13 and $18 million in its entirety, which is definitely not good, while Cop Shop will make anywhere between $7 and $10 million. Again, that would be a worldwide number there. Still don't have an official budget yet for Cop Shop, but we can estimate it probably cost around $30 to $50 million or so. So the film's break-even number will be around $75 million. It's not going to get anywhere near that. So for both of those films, we're looking at around $40 million losses, anywhere from $38 to $40 million losses for those two movies, which really isn't all that much of a surprise based on those very poor opening weekend numbers, but still something that I know some people are interested in, because some people like Cry Macho. I personally did not. I thought the story was really, really bad. I thought some of the acting was good, some of the acting was not so good, and I'm not really all that surprised at the film not doing nearly as well. We also have, again, those numbers for Dune. As you can see, $76.5 million now internationally, so the film still is a $200 million loss because of the budget, but it is still not opened in a lot of different categories, and so this one will be a more difficult one to track as far as being able to make projections on. simply because the way that my own modeling works is based off of the first 2 weeks of release, and that's the first 2 weeks when it's, again, films that are being released in multiple territories all at the same time, domestically and internationally, and we're not getting that with this movie. So it'll be a little bit more on the tricky side to make any type of real accurate predictions or projections for that. But what we can say is that the break-even number for Dune, though, we do know is $412.5 million, and I would say the fact that it's only released in around 30 markets at this point, and it's already gotten to 76.5, and it's trending ahead of a lot of other films. I think that things are looking relatively good for this movie. That being said, if we see that a big chunk of its box office comes from places like China, which means millions of dollars will be going to Chinese communists, it also, I think, is going to indicate that the number could essentially, or potentially rather, be inflated. So we'll have to keep a track on that as well, because if the number is hovering just over the 412.5 million it needs to break even, and we see a huge chunk of the money's coming from China, then it's kind of a bit of fool's gold in a way. But we'll have to wait and see exactly how much money this actually makes. All the while, No Time to Die is, again, expected to have to make around $750 million at least in order for it to break even. So these are all numbers that we're looking at. As I mentioned before with Shang-Chi, now it's $363 million worldwide. Right now, it's only at a negative $6 million loss. And so, as you can see, very much by next weekend is going to surpass the minimum loss gain, and definitely, I would say, probably not going to get to that $84 million max range, but hey, theoretically, I think it's possible. But I think once competition gets introduced into the marketplace, I think that is what's going to keep it from getting to that point. So I would say you're looking anywhere from maybe $4 million to maybe that $39 million average that I had posted as the actual net gain, net profit for this film. And then add on top of that any Blu-ray 4K sales, and this film absolutely will be a winner as far as financials are concerned. However, it will still also be one of the lowest grossing MCU films of all time. So that is also something that has to be taken into consideration. We can talk about it being successful for pandemic times, but if we're going to talk about it in the grand scheme of the MCU, we have to kind of keep it in a lot more of a realistic turn. But what are your thoughts about these numbers? Let me know in the comment section below. Are you kind of surprised that Shang-Chi is doing as well as it is? Again, as I said, once the first 2 weeks came out, it was very easy for me to make those projections, and sure enough, it's really living up to those projections. And I know that there were some people who had some doubts about it, but hey, the numbers are what they are, and there really is no way for us to be able to say otherwise. I'm seeing way too many people really trying to push out these different narratives of the film costing a lot more than what was speculated, and so therefore it really needs to make a lot more than the original number. But the numbers that they're bringing up really have no actual data points to back them up, no reporting to back them up either, and so I really think that we have to kind of, again, just be honest with our numbers, be honest with what is actually being presented. That's why if I ever say, hey, this is what I think it's going to cost, I make it very clear that that's my opinion. Like, it's like, oh, this is what I think it's going to cost based on just general feelings, general sentiments, and those can easily be wrong. I don't ever actually make projections and predictions until I have actual raw data in front of me. So, for instance, someone in my comments is attacking me over the fact that, oh, you said that the Halloween Kills is going to cost so much more than what it probably will. And here's the thing. I said this is what I think it's going to be. Again, that's an opinion. I'll wait until we actually have a projected budget for that film and then be able to use that number to run with it. And so up until then, it's just my own thought on the matter. And could I easily be wrong in my opinion? Absolutely. But until we have an actual number to look at, it's all speculation at this point. And we do have numbers, though, for Shang-Chi. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. No Time to Die, as you can see, is going to start its rollout September 29th. So again, we'll have some No Time to Die numbers to talk about this coming weekend. So not only will there be Venom, but there be Carnage numbers talking about this coming weekend, but also some early offshore numbers for No Time to Die, and that to me is going to be one of the more interesting ones to follow, simply by the fact that it needs to make so much money to break even, and it likely will not make that money. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about any of the stuff that I mentioned in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button. If you're watching on Odyssey, you are all amazing and beautiful people. Again, if you want to keep track of these various things, please check out my box office tracking section on my website, ombreviews.com. And I have seen some people ask about trying to make this where the section here remains static. Here's the thing. I've already set it to do that. The issue is that once you publish a chart like this in the way that it's being published, it does not actually work. If you actually were to go to the actual, because I use Sheets for this, if you were actually to go to that, guess what? This column would remain static because I do have it set to that. But once it is published, for some reason, it doesn't do that. So if you know how to, when a sheet gets published to a website like this, if you know how to get it so that this column remains the same, that way these numbers, when they are being scrolled across, you can still keep and see what what movies being talked about. Please contact me, let me know, because I would love to know that and fix that, because I would love for that, just for my own sake, to be able to have that at my disposal. But then again, let me know in that pinned comment, especially if you have any ideas about that. But again, in the actual Sheets, I have already had this set to be a static column. It's just when it's published, it does not do that for some reason. Anyway, you guys are great. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my September Locals, Patreon, and Subscribe Star members. First with my Locals members, Cats App, D Sharp, It's a Modern Major General Story, Laura Bifford Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. I want to give a shout out to, especially to Laura, who is now a double supporter on Locals and on Patreon. So thank you for that. And to all of my Locals members. A shout out also to my Patreon members, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Joe Horn, Jonathan Garney, Gomer Kyle 79, the Modern Major General Story once again, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out also to my Subscribe Star members, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to new members, one-time supporters over on Locals, Kara Tharp, K Tharp 56, and Brett D 90. Thank you again for being a one-time supporter over on Locals, and also to my newest Patreon member, Stan Gunovic. And hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but thank you for being my newest members. It really does mean a lot. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single video or live stream on the main channel, please check out the links in the description below, specifically that top link, which will bring you to all of the links to my various social media pages and also places of support as well. And remember that if you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also get access to giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I have a live giveaway of Snatch on 4K Steelbook. I've also got ones for Dread, Wrath of Man Blu-ray. I've also got A Quiet Place Part 2 on 4K. I've got Top Gun on 4K, Sicario on 4K, tons of films and more to come, especially as more films are getting released for those giveaways. At the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. Not only do you get to listen to the podcast, you also get to ask questions that we answer as much as we can and as fully as we can in a much more, I guess you could say, uncensored way, but again, a much more free-flowing way for our members over there at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. And if you join the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get access to all of those things, plus in your first month, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, and I send it to you no matter where you are in the world. And also, you get to once a month be featured on the channel in the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we talk about movie, news, and pretty much anything that you want to talk about. So if that all sounds like fun to you, check out those links below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.